All right, good evening, everybody. Today is Wednesday, February 26th. It's a meeting of the school building committee. The first item on the agenda would be, and Jeff, we're gonna go off the agenda, recap the joint meeting with the school committee and select board. Is that the first thing you're gonna go over?
That would be lovely. I gotta go over it? I thought you were going over it. Yeah,
Oh, no. That's why we pay you the big bucks, mister.
yeah,
That beard is certainly going gray on you, man.
yeah, the bottom half. Yeah, it's all in
Yeah.
the bottom half.
Holy moly.
God, we
Um,
remember when you didn't have one.
That's right.
Way back in the day.
So, recap on the meeting. So at your last meeting at the school building committee on January 22nd, you guys voted to recommend the preferred option of AR4A. We had a long, lengthy debate on the pros and cons of that prior to coming to that conclusion. Both select board and school committee were present at that meeting and heard the deliberation of this group. We then went in front of the forum of the select board on February 5th, and we're joined by the school committee at that meeting where an updated presentation was made with the conclusions and recommendations for 4A, along with the cost comparison and all the rationale where Bob presented, why that was the optimal solution for the school. Ultimately, both boards came to the same conclusion as the building committee that option 4A or AR 4A was the best solution. And so there was a good, robust conversation there. We had a bunch of people attending in the audience, which I think was helpful. A couple of comments and questions that came back. I know since that time, there's been a lot of inquiries, coming in via email or questions to the various school building committee members and school committee members, and you guys have been busy getting back to those people, which is good, which means there's engagement going on and, things that we like to hear from the public. Speaking of engagement, there's some updates to the project website, and I'm just gonna kind of share a screen here. So we hit the first agenda item there, and the second is the project website. And so, Vertex has been maintaining your project website. We've kind of shown those thumbnails. Now that there's been a recommendation for AR4A on the design tab, we've now listed those floor plans and the updated site plan. The report you approved tonight will go up there once it's all submitted. If not Friday, by Monday, it'll all be up there on the website. Loaded in there. It's a fairly large file, so I got to decide whether we break it into multiple PDFs to download or not, because that could be frustrating to the public. We've also updated the cost tab. We show the ladder that we've talked about there. We show the cost presentation that was made to the committee, all three committees, that is, and then we kept some of the historical stuff that was on the website. So this is a living document. We're going to keep adding to this, but I did want the committee aware because this is your front door. In the absence of stopping you guys at the grocery store, this is where people are coming for news on the project. And so we'll continue to update that overall. Any questions on that?
Yes, do we have a way of knowing how many people are actually going there?
Good question.
How many clicks there are, as they say?
Yeah, I forget whether we
Yeah,
have.
that was technical.
I was just gonna say, high tech. Woo.
You used the term correctly.
We have some younger staff that manage that. We'll have to check in, I think.
We have a way of tracking that. It doesn't show like a ticker tape at the
I'm
bottom.
not trying to get at who it is, just the volume.
Yeah. No, we can
Yeah.
certainly do that.
I was gonna say, so this is Eric with Vertex, and I've recently taken over this from one of our staff members, and I am still learning a little bit, but I believe, yes, there is a way to check. And I did find the other day that there is a way for me to see who's subscribed at the bottom. So we have a few people who have put their email addresses into, I want to say 7 or 8 into the website. And that doesn't mean much because there's a lot more people that are probably going and interacting without necessarily leaving their email address. But there's definitely, I think there's got to be a way to find out who's visited the site.
Yeah, to date, we haven't pushed anything out with the subscribe feature because, the deliberations were ongoing and there was no real conclusion. I think with the update and with the upload, we will put that out next week as a notice to anybody that does subscribe that it has been updated and here are the important documents.
And Jeff, one more thing I did want to bring up is that in our last meeting that we had two members of the school committee. There was a change in the school committee members who have been now appointed. So they've been sworn in by the select board, and now they've been appointed by the select board and sworn in. So Shayna and Robin are now the representatives from the school committee.
Welcome. And so with those new additions, welcome Shane and Robin, we will update the roster that goes to the MSBA and get the town to sign that and then reflect, the change in leadership in the project. And we'll get your names up there on the Meet the Team too. So we will update this living document. Like I said, the report will go in this important documents tab. Meet the Team tab will be updated for those changes, and cost and design and schedule were already updated last week with all the changes that occurred with that February 5th presentation. And it's the final option is also on the homepage. So as soon as people land there on the homepage, you see the selected option there with some narratives around it. Any questions on the website? So sliding back to the agenda, so we're going to talk about the draft preferred schematic report. And then we'll get to a point where after I answer your questions, we'll be looking for an authorization from this committee to go ahead and approve it. We can kind of talk about the road ahead after that. And I do want to hit on the FAS meeting that's upcoming when we get there. And then if you guys have house business with the minutes and invoices, we can go into that. So I'm going to try and move this tab if I can. All right, so I'm not going to page turn the whole thing. It's 500 and some odd pages, but I do want to kind of talk about it high level.
Yeah, I have a question on page 403.
There you go. No
Never
problem. Let's go right there, Jim. So, overall, this is a cover letter that, that Vertex has reviewed and commented. And so since we got the draft, the end of last week that we shared with you, we've been going back hourly with TAP A, so much so that Charlie wants me to start consolidating my comments instead of onesie twosies, but we're firing them back at them one at a time as we uncover issues or tweaks or changes. And so we've reviewed all the pages. Mike and I are hitting comments on phasing, on schedule, coordination, on tightening up price, risk assessments, really trying to make sure everything's buttoned up. We've been sending over budget update statements and some of which I included with you as your supplemental packet today, in which I'll go through that in a moment. But overall, kind of the way it flows is kind of just general introduction. 1.2 is a historical record of the submission you guys did in the response to comments from last summer. 2.1 is kind of more historical. It's about, the assessment of existing conditions, which happened more in the previous phase. The very dry read, if you read it on risk assessment, is just natural occurring disasters that can occur. And what does that mean for little old Millis in the global world? So kind of much to do about nothing in that section. Then we kind of get into the real project specific stuff where we kind of walk through the alternatives analysis, kind of the work that this committee did, the evaluation you did, the phasing that was presented to you guys, outline on the systems, both structural, utilities, MEP systems, the cost estimating we were updating this week to fine tune a few things. Which I'll circle back to in a second. Permitting hadn't changed. And then overall schedule, Vertex's schedule is in there. And we chose not to include that. We have the matrix of pricing options there. And then we kind of go into the preferred solution, which is a one-page narrative. Bob's redlined educational program, which is a good chunk of that. There's, I think 40 some odd pages on that. Might even be in there twice, a red line version and a non-red line version.
I think there are two red line versions in
Yeah,
there.
I think one of them needs to be swapped out for a non-red line. So that was the difference there. And then the lead scorecard. So, jump into that tab for a second. And Chris is here as well if you guys have any questions for him. The MSBA program had changed the sustainability goals of the project from Clyde Brown to now. Used to be able to get 2 points for being LEED silver and LEED certified. Now they've changed it where those 2 points are no longer available. Instead, LEED silver is a mandatory minimum. It used to just be LEED certified. Now you have to meet LEED silver mandatory. So the project will meet that, but there's a further evaluation if you went all in with a kind of an all electric geothermal building, and that would get you up to 3 or 4%. We're not planning to pursue that with you guys based on all the feedback we've had to date, because that comes with several $1 million of upfront cost in order to try and achieve that. So that was not included in the draft. The scorecard was, with the letter associated with that was being updated in the draft. The updated floor plans and site plans were in there. There is an axonometric there, which I can kind of go to. We hadn't shown that to the committee in one of your meetings. That kind of looks a little cool. We'll look at that. And then I'll talk about the budget statement in the today, because that was not in the earlier draft. We did receive the certified approval today back from the people that needed to sign that. And that's merely a list of the publicly posted and held meetings in compliance with open meeting law that happened from April until now, which April being your last submission to the state. So I know I kind of talked a lot there. Does anybody want to hit any specific topics before I talk about the kind of supplemental stuff I sent you today?
I just want to circle back on one thing, Jeff. I happen to be talking to the DPW director, and going back onto the groundwater recharge. Do we have something in the budget for that? Because right now, I read the report, all 437 pages of it, and it had a thing where, currently the downspouts discharge onto the ground. Just want to make sure that, we have that, thought about at least.
It may be too, that particular issue may be too granular for PSR phase, but in the final, if the project moves forward, we will have to address that, because you can't do that.
Right. No,
like
and that's
that.
why, and that's all I need to hear. That's what I
Yeah.
figured, Chris. I just wanted to ask. And then the only other question was, in the plumbing scope, there was no radon pre-due for the radon pipe. So since we're putting in new, slab on grade, we should have the ability to have a riser up to the roof to meet EPA standards on that.
Yeah, that was revised based on your comment for that.
Okay, cool.
It
All right,
might
good.
not
Thank
have
you.
made it in what you're seeing on the screen, but like Jeff said, we're kind of back and pinging and ponging between Vertex and Tape, and so it's constantly being updated in these last few hours, and that I definitely know was being worked on earlier this morning. So
No, all good. Thank you. Appreciate it.
So Rich looks at like plumbing and radon, and I look at capitalization. Letter capitalization, not monetary. There were just a few instances where it talked about English classes or the subject English, and English wasn't capitalized. And it's just pages 260, 266, and page 398.
okay.
I got a question. I'm assuming that this is a living document that MSBA is going to look at it, come back with questions, we're going to revise it, blah, blah, blah. Is that correct?
No, it'll be a record document. So this one will get submitted. It'll be a formal record of kind of the summary of everything we've done over the last 9 months since April. And that becomes kind of a historic, record of what gets submitted. They will comment. It doesn't become the finality of the project, so the project lives on, right? The actual final scope, final cost, final program, all that will happen in the next submission, which occurs in August. So what this does is kind of locks in the evaluation stage of the project, where you went from the 7 options down to 1. That kind of goes in the file draw. And then what we spend the next 6 months on is taking the 1 and making that detailed and filling out all the costs and answering all those questions you guys will have and do have about making sure the elements you want in that final number are in there.
Okay. Thank you.
Diane, do you remember on the PSR or PDP phase where the MSBA sent us review comments?
Yes,
I don't know if you remember that.
I
They do
do.
the same thing for PSR, and then the project team, Tape and Vertex, will have it's usually like 14 days or something to
Okay.
respond to the comments, but the document itself isn't revised usually.
Okay,
In-
thank you.
Are you going to briefly describe, or have you already done, there are a number of pages in there in the thing that was circulated by Mike, which are placeholder only pages. I assume that something's been put in them.
Yeah, so yeah, it's being updated constantly, and if there's an item that says placeholder, it's because we're waiting on something.
All of a sudden,
There's like class.
There was budget numbers.
The draft
Yeah.
was developed last week, and we've made a significant amount of progress and added a bunch of things since then. So I think that's what you're referring to, Jim, including the budget numbers, which
Which we're going to go over
items.
now.
Yeah.
So
Okay, it was interesting what the town, was the town of Weymouth or somebody was doing.
Yeah, there was a couple of placeholders.
Fine. Okay, fine.
So yeah, we're gonna review the things that weren't in there. We're gonna review now, right? So
Okay.
that, especially things like cost, right? Because we want to make sure you understand that overall. All right. So with that cue, right? So just to refresh everybody's memory, where are we? Costs. The cost of AR4A, which is our ad rental that we selected, is about 98.2 million. Now, the numbers that I had presented to both this committee and the other two committees were an average, and I kind of explained that in the interview or in the email today, where we had this estimate and we also had Vertex's independent estimate. I kind of blended those numbers in that table. It didn't move the needle very much, a couple $100,000 up or down, depending on which estimate that we included, but I did want to let you know there was a slight variation in those numbers. So if those of you that are math people are saying it's off by 300,000 or 500,000, that's why I had averaged the other two estimates. Here we have to pick one and run with it. And so that's what we're doing here. So it's the designer's estimate is there the architect of record. And so PM&C is their estimator. And so the 98.2 million is the number for option AR4A. And again, that will be updated with your final design solution or whatever you guys choose over the next 6 months. But to answer some of the other questions, at this point we carry, escalation and design and pricing. So it's at 12% now.
Ooh.
When we get to the August approval, that'll drop down to 10%. So, you'll make decisions between now and then. We'll push 2% up above the line into actual decisions and scope that you guys make overall. And then we'll also dial in the duration of the project. We'll look at the phasing a little in greater detail to determine, is 27 months the correct number? Is it 26? Is it 28? But we're kind of in and around those, nipping at that edge. You'll also make the decision of whether you're going with a CM or a general contractor. Right now, this is based on the more conservative approach as a construction manager. So you'll see that we carried a CM contingency there of 2.5%. Being an ad reno, that's much more conducive to a construction manager partnership versus a lump sum low bidder. But you will have the ability to make those decisions at a later date as well. So all those decisions you make over the next 6 months, we'll dial this up or down. We'll look at the phasing and the general requirements associated with that. So that number is then had to go into the MSBA's table. So this is just different than the one I presented to you. Ours is a little more user-friendly. Theirs is rigid and can't be adjusted. They want theirs based on square footage. So I took the estimate I just showed you. I then, go to the dollars per square foot and then punch those in times the square footage. So in our case, option AR4A is at 98,000 square feet for the renovated portion and about 52,000 square feet for the new construction portion. I multiply those by their respective dollars per square foot. We add in the site, take down building, hazmat, et cetera, and then that comes out to that $98.2 million number. And so that's how they want their thing put in there. I kept the total project budget number. So what was presented to all three committees is still the same on the right-hand side. If there was an adjustment in the construction cost up or down, I took that out of the contingency that was in the soft cost. So, all in, I'm not asking this committee to push forward a number that was different than the other committees. The internal numbers may have moved up or down, but overall those numbers stayed the same. So it's important that you guys understand that, and that's how I approached it.
Jeff?
Yes.
So the number that the public thinks we're going to spend on this thing is 127.4 million.
Currently, yes.
Well, I mean, currently, yeah, because the number does move around now and then, and anytime it moves, people get agitated. But just to clarify, this is without financing costs. Is that right?
These numbers are without financing costs. So yes, because this is the MSBA's form and what's required to go in the report, which
Right.
And at town meeting, you'll still have to vote the entirety of the project,
Oh, yeah.
Explanations, with all kinds of asterisks, but explanations about what you guys expect to get back. But you'll have to bond or have the ability to bond the entirety of the project. That's the way that
Right.
standard language goes.
But
But yes,
that ultimately gets back to people. What people want to know, as we all know, is how much is it going to cost me?
that's correct.
So, okay.
And so at that point, we'll do the tax impacts. You'll have made many more decisions and then determine whether 127.4 million was the right number. If it wants to be a little less if we're worried about the federal executive orders that are coming out hourly, and whether we want to carry a little more contingency come August, if that has not slowed down. Those would be decisions you guys will need to make, or do we think we have enough money for the future, or are tariffs and other things getting really crazy at that point? We don't need to make any of those decisions today. We will need to make a decision about, level of comfort come August. And hopefully that's all kind of settled down by that point.
And then the state would pick up some amount, call it 40% for discussion, because that's where we kind of settled on all of our other discussions of that 127.4.
Yes,
the
I mean,
MSBA
we'll walk you through with a high level of clarity on what we believe they will and will not participate in.
So this is very close to what we talked about before, which is less than 80 million for the town at that point.
There's no change to the total cost column. I've kept that the same. It just doesn't show what the anticipated MSBA reimbursement is because they haven't really given us the feedback.
Right.
I gave you Vertex's educated guess based on all the historical data out there and your project specific details.
Right.
Um,
So we'll get to that. That's good.
We'll get to that. And then, but the 40%, could shift, right? So if you choose on that example, right, if you choose to carry more contingency because of the what ifs that are unknown at that point,
Yep.
You're choosing to add more, but the risk is yours too, right? So that 40% effectively may look like less, but it's because you carried back end contingency. And so that's just a messaging thing we'll have to deal with the public.
Right.
If you choose to carry more contingency that's not eligible.
But you'll give us some educated guesses as this unfolds, right? Or somebody will, because we won't know whether the tariff on steel has to do with us or not. I mean,
I don't know. There's not enough minutes in the day to keep tabs on the ticker tape that's flying out the window.
I know.
But yes, our goal will be by that point, as a lot of it's set to hit in the next couple of months, there'll be some traction, some track record, a little bit of history, a little bit of guessing, and a little bit of skill, and we'll come up with the right number.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we've got a whole committee at work that's doing that for our projects. They're all builders, and they're playing the guessing game every day now. How much we should put for contingency.
And we'll do the same.
We're starting in March 1st, so this is an important guessing game for us.
Craig,
There'll
Yes.
be plenty of opinions
Can
up by that point in the market. Yeah, go ahead, Dan.
can we finance at a 40-year term instead of,
We're checking into all that right now. There's a couple things we're looking at, and we were trying to find out all of our options for financing and others. Either Holliston or Hopkinton had a bill that James Reno DeRosa sponsored that allowed you to exempt low income, and that's the key phrase there, low income seniors from school building project taxes. And we don't know enough details to go into detail on it, but it would not be higher income individuals, but those that own their homes, that are seniors, that are lower income, could be exempted. Now that means you're pushing all that cost over to non-low income seniors. So that's a conversation at a town meeting vote. But secondly, with that, and we're checking on the 40-year financing, which would dramatically shift things. And I have no real issue financing over 40 years on a building that's going to last 50 years on people that are going to experience the benefits of this thing for the next 50 years. Let everybody pay a fair share. And looking at more of a traditional style mortgage financing instead of the escalated principal payments up front, where we're level principal, which will keep the cost the same for everybody over the 30 or 40 years, which is, I believe, a much more fair way to allocate the cost of this project, especially since we have no other large-scale construction projects that should be hitting in that window.
but that should bring the cost down if we can go 40 years, correct?
Oh, yeah, that definitely will bring the cost down and also level principal.
No. It costs more money, not less.
No,
But
it's the cost per household.
Per household per year.
Yeah, it's the cost per household per
Yes.
year. But the issue is, Jim, as far as a taxpayer, I hope that I'm highly concerned about the first 20 years of those payments, but the next 20 years, it may not be a big issue for me.
I'm not that worried about the 20 either, to tell you the truth. But in any event,
Yeah.
let me just interrupt for a second because
You already
I'd like to
did.
clarify. I mean, whose responsibility? I mean, it's not the building committee's responsibility to determine how the town's going to finance this thing.
No,
right?
it is not.
We're supposed to bring to you a project,
Right.
which we have believe is the right project, and the MSBA has voted to participate in it. And how the town decides to finance it is up to you guys.
Right. And then we'll work
You
on
meaning
that
the
and
select
bring
board.
those numbers out.
Yeah.
So you guys do your bit, get that 127.4 to whatever it is finally with all the design changes or contingencies. Get the state amount at 40, 41, 39, whatever the percentage is going to be based on reality. Give us a number, and then we'll Jody, our new finance director, will work with us to come up with the best financing strategies. And she's quite creative. She's got a lot of ideas. So good ideas, not bad creative ideas. Sometimes they're
The narrative here. So,
why,
you know, as part of the narrative here, that wasn't in the draft. I just described that the work that these three committees did, the school building committee, kind of the history of what happened over the last 9 months, which is, you kind of had us slow down. We did the deep dive on the 10-year capital plan, really understand the starting line of keeping that building running, right? And then you asked the project team to look at 2 additional renovations and 2 additional add renovations. And you really kind of created that ladder of options that we talked about. So that paragraph is really a history of this ladder of options that were considered. And then ultimately all 3 boards weighed the pros and cons and determined that the best solution was AR4A, for this 50-year investment, essentially, because it got you to the longest run of a building, where some of the renovation only options were only buying you, another 20 to 25 years. And then to the point that was just discussed, we talk about the range of options that are on this tab here, the 76 to 165 million that are kind of happening in the background here. And that, you ultimately recommended currently that $127 million number, and I clarified Craig's information from last meeting about it's a debt exclusion, not a debt override. And so I clarified that language in here. And we kind of, I don't know if this is the latest, greatest number from the capital planning committee, but just that you have another $60 million of other projects on the books over the next 10-year horizon in the background. So this will go in as the narrative that's on top of the budget sheet that I just have presented to you guys. Okay. And then the only other budget piece was from Terry's side. I don't know if or the school side. I don't know if like Terry or Bob, if you want to take anything or say anything about this, but this is a tab that's historical in data. And so it first asks for revenue, kind of how the operating cost of the building works and revenue. And so Terry put that together over the last 3 fiscal cycles. And then it does the same with staff costs. So obviously this one showed the step down in operating costs and staffing because of the failed override last year. And so the school department is kind of maintaining the current levels in the future projected building, and so it's basically viewing it more as status quo, so that he's adjusted for the current year and then carrying those same levels of staffing into the new projected building. And so I just wanted that out there for the committee as well. And if you have any questions on that, Bob or Terry can answer that. Okay. All right, so back to the table of contents. So as missing pieces go, we just covered the cost, construction cost, the pricing data, the narrative associated with that, the budget statement, covered the lead certificate, and you had the space summary in there. We talked about the percentage breakdown of about 99,000 square feet rent out versus 52,000 square foot new. And then in the packet, wherever it was this, where did it go? So we saw the updated site plan last time. And then there was this
Isometric.
Remember, I don't know what page that was on. So this wasn't shown to the committee, so I just was new information. I did want you to see that. So, TAP A is obviously projecting, decisions that haven't been made by the committee, but assuming it's clad similarly to the existing building in that kind of red brick approach to the project, kind of showing ribbon of windows. This is just placeholder, right? These are the decisions that you're going to make over the next 6 months, but we needed to put something in there as a placeholder. So this shows kind of the makeup of the building, how you have a 2-story volume. You kind of have this undulation of volumes in between where it goes from 1 to 2 to 1.5 stories. and then back to a 2-story volume with that kind of 2+ for the gymnasium here in this zone. And they also provided a cross section. And so, this is Clyde Brown up on the hill when Clyde Brown is a 1-story. And then that hill down kind of cuts through the driveway where it's kind of 2-story, that kind of up and down middle ground, and then 2-story at the other end. And then we talked about, when you look at the floor plan there, that, we'd have a new elevator in the addition because there is not currently a connection on the 2-story components of the building. Whether we choose to do one, that's another decision point you guys could make, and we'll look at the opportunity costs of that. But I imagine on $1 per square foot, that would get kind of pricey, but something that you guys can consider in the next phase as we kind of dial in the overall scope of this project. So I know that's a lot. That's kind of in a nutshell. The report, I filled in the pieces that were missing as draft. I'm happy to talk at any length about any of these things or go to any specific pages. If you have little typos like Bob, feel free to email those so that Chris gets them in there. We are not English majors, and neither is TAPE, so happy to have somebody watching over our shoulder for those elements as well.
Jeff, that 3D, when I saw it on the stuff earlier, I mean, I thought that was very good. The reason I'm bringing it up is in the failed project for the senior center, various plans were circulated and they took on a life of their own. And this 3-dimensional was particularly important to give people a better sense of, what this is going to look like, even if we haven't decided whether it's going to be brick or whatever, stucco. I mean, I think I don't know if other members agree with me, but I think this kind of thing is really effective in giving people a real sense of what we're asking them to consider.
Well, I think down the road, that would be something that TAPE would be able to provide, and we'd be able to use that as our, path forward to, the town meeting.
And, it's possible that part of the problem with, I don't want to rehash it, but too many plans were circulated for that senior center. And then an item, offsite rebuild or new build was circulated, and that drawing was, not as detailed. So
Right.
People got all upset about that. I don't know. I mean, it's.
I think the good news is we're going to be down to 1 on this.
We're done. We're at 1 at this
We're
point.
at 1.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and as you get into schematic design and more of the details decisions are being made, you're actually going to, and the lead up to a town meeting and a ballot vote, you're going to start to see a lot more renderings and perspective views and things where you really can visualize yourself or visualize the building. And so this is just the beginning of many that we're going to show you to kind of characterize how the building is going to come out. And this is actually being, yeah, including the interior.
Jim, my question to you is, are you suggesting, I know you're saying kind of 2 things. You're saying, 1, it's very effective, but then you're also saying there were too many out there. Are you suggesting to get this one out there now, even though we don't know it's going to be brick and blah, 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 blah?
I don't think so, but on the other hand, once we start that process, let's focus on the 1, et cetera, and make sure that we, as somebody just mentioned, now that we have, I think it was Rich, we have 1 thing for people to consider, even though it may vary a little bit. I just saw this in the report when it was circulated earlier. I thought that was one pretty effective addition to what we'd seen before.
Yeah, and I don't think there'll be large deviations from this, except maybe in finish and stuff. This is
Right.
the design we talked about.
Yes.
Can I ask one really mundane question? You showed something in passing that said we have X number of million of capital projects in the next 10 years on one of your slides.
Yeah, 63.5 million.
I don't think that's the right number, because I just pulled up the capital planning report that we did for the last town meeting. And there's 18 million, and I can get, let's just call that a number we need to check. We're meeting tomorrow night for that committee, because there's 18 million of maintenance, 17 million of capital, and $97 million of potential override capital needs. I think the school is a lion's share of that, so that 60 might be high, but we're having a meeting tomorrow night and we'll get a number down on that.
We have to submit it before tomorrow night, though.
Oh,
I just need a placeholder number, and I can, if you know what that school number is, we can just what I had done That number was sourced from April when I asked the question of Mike Kaczynski and them, and so I carried the same number from April.
Yeah, I'm looking to try to read this thing.
So you don't have to
continue on. I'll try to find the number.
Just shoot me an email tomorrow or tonight if you can, and we can swap that number out.
All right.
Yeah, well, I don't even know what number you got, because 95,000 is the total cost for the high school. I'll come up with a number right now, and I'll share this chart with Mike, and we'll discuss it real quickly.
Okay.
So go ahead and we'll talk later.
All right, so that was the review and discussion of the report. Happy to take any and all questions related to it. If there are other elements, that this group wants to see or talk about, we can go to any substantive page. It's meant to be a roll-up, kind of everything you've seen. Like I highlighted a couple of things that were new material, but more or less it's a record. And the backup is all the minutes that occurred from the various publicly posted meetings as well. Right. And so the MSBA just wants to note there was ample opportunities for the public at large to kind of follow along and provide feedback, which we've done in terms of multiple public forums, having a website, having an email address, having a subscribe function. So there are plenty of ways for people to follow if they're interested. All right. So with that, Rich, back
So,
to you. Your committee's at a point where you're ready to take a motion.
Yeah, I think we're ready. So unless there's any other comments, I make a motion that the school building committee authorize the owner's project manager to submit the preferred schematic report PSR to the MSBA for the middle high school project, subject to any minor adjustments approved through the chair.
Second,
Okay, the motion's been made in second, and so I'm going to do it by roll call vote. Diane,
aye.
Jim McCaffrey,
Yes.
John McDonough,
Yes.
Shayna Castiani, sorry, I probably butchered your name.
That's okay. Yes.
Robin,
Yes.
and I'm a yes. So the motion passed unanimously.
Okay, great. Thank you very much and congratulations. This is a major milestone for you guys, through no small feat and no number of small discussions and debates. So, I think you guys did do a great job in terms of a balanced option, right, that serves the long-term needs of the town. So as far as schedule, the next thing we're going to do is submit it. So on the agenda, the next thing was a schedule. So the schedule update here is that we're going to submit this tomorrow. From there, we then need to get scheduled at the MSBA's Facilities Assessment Subcommittee, too many of my own acronyms, FAS, Facilities Assessment Subcommittee. And so that's where they then take the ed plan that Bob submitted and really kick the tires pretty hard on that. And
Do
they
we need to
also,
attend that, Jeff? Do we represented there, or do you take care of it?
yeah, yes, Rich, I need you and Bob, and it's a daytime meeting. So if it's not you, we'll need another representative for the town. So I have that email drafted, but not sent to you and Bob yet. That's in my, it's half drafted at the moment. I'll kind of go over some of the slides right now, but essentially what that is there's 2 dates in March,
And that's fine. I'll take a day off.
which is either the 12th or the 26th. And so one of those 2 dates in the morning is we'll have a 1-hour time slot. It's a virtual meeting. So you can just pull up somewhere quiet if that's possible on your job, to try and present the options. It's really mostly Bob talking with TAP A, and Vertex will have 2 slides. So your role is not significant as the chair there. But really they have Bob explain what he did and why the ed plan is the ed plan and why it justifies. Out of that product, back to the feedback loop, you guys may decide to tighten up some of the program. You may make minor tweaks, minor adjustments. Square footage might shift a little bit here or there as part of the final solution, but I don't see any wholesale changes. They also ask for the kind of public engagement. So, right now TAP A and Vertex are working on slides associated with that, and I don't have TAP A's yet because again we're focused on the report tomorrow. But this is the slide that I'm putting together to go in the packet tomorrow to the MSBA. And what this really is here on the screen here, you don't have to read all the details, but it's a recap of the community engagement process. So, we had multiple forums in 2024 in February and April and October and December. And then we have our multiple board meetings with the select board and school committee for those votes in February. Talk about the outreach, the websites, the alternative venues. The slide I'm going to work with Bob on today and tomorrow is kind of what came out of the feedback from the public. So we're just trying to distill some of that down, that, you know, the hopes and dreams of the educational priorities are, you know, good collaborative learning spaces, inclusive learning and spaces, faculty support spaces, modern technology. Community priorities are, you know, building the town can be proud of, that's safe and secure. Fiscal responsibilities, such as a durable building with their finishes, and then a functional and budget cost-conscious design. So that's some of the stuff that we've distilled for you, and you know, I'll run that by Rich and Bob to make sure I get the wording correct. It's then the same cost table I just presented in front of you guys. And then kind of the why did the committee come to the conclusions. You don't need to read all these words, but this is just paraphrased from Bob's slides of why it was, you know, alleviating the overcrowding, modern learning, splitting the middle high school programs, resolving deficiencies in the existing buildings, and that it's the most fiscally responsible solution of the options evaluated. And so, you know, that's going to go in a PowerPoint presentation that we will then make at one of those two meetings in the month of March to the MSBA's assessment subcommittee. And then once the dust settles from all that, we'll then schedule another community forum to kind of update them in late March or April about the submission that went in, the solution that's out there, and then, you know, let them know the door is still open, right? So we still want feedback from the community. They can still influence the building facade look, the designs, the materials, the finishes, all the things that you guys are going to debate over the next 6 months. So that kind of concludes kind of next steps in the schedule. And unless I forgot anything, Chris or Mike, that was the end of our formal presentation tonight.
I think you hit on everything, Jeff, from my perspective.
Can we
All right.
get the copy of the PowerPoint? Not to edit it, but after you've done it, just the rest of the committee. So we
Yeah,
can
so
see.
the committee will get everything. So tomorrow when we transmit the report.
I know we'll get everything. We've been getting everything. It's like fire hose. Well, how about with an index? I mean, never mind.
That's a good point. The TAPE is promised, and they're required to put a table of contents and an index on the PDF of the report because of the 500 pages. You do need to be able to sort through and go to the specific section. So that PDF
That would be a dramatic breakthrough, I would say.
will be much nicer. And then I got to decide from a download standpoint if we want to break that into 1 or 2 or 3 components so that the users at home don't get the circle wheel of death when trying to download it from the website. And then we'll get a copy of the presentation that goes to the MSBA. It'll be a draft. Ultimately, you'll get the final one won't get published until it gets finalized with the MSBA, but we can send you guys the draft that goes in as well tomorrow.
All right, that sounds great. Well, thank you, Jeff and Chris and Mike, for all the help. And we've got some bills to pay and some minutes to approve. So if I'm sure you guys.
Anticipated next meeting for this group?
Do we have one in the books or not?
I don't think we do.
We do.
When do we, Jeff, is there a specific thought process? Should we have one just pick a next month sometime or what?
Kind of depends on which facilities assessment committee we get assigned to. You know, more from a feedback loop standpoint. Chris, I don't know if you had, I'm thinking at the end of the month, I guess in short, but I know I also on schedule, I think we've also been invited to present to the capital planning committee next Tuesday night. So if anybody on this committee wants to join that committee, we are TAPE and Vertex, and I think Rich, maybe Bob, are planning on presenting the solution at that project to that meeting. And
we
so
would need to know that because we'd have to post a meeting if we get a certain number. So that would be, if people are attending, they should let us know.
Not if you're not deliberating, if they're just listening in, it's not necessarily.
Well, a couple of the members are on the committee, so we've already got 2 or 3.
We could just post.
Never mind. Never mind.
yeah, post it.
That's
anyway.
that's
I'm not
an
on this
in-person
committee,
meeting,
though,
right?
so I'm okay.
Jeff, is that Jeff and Mike, are you attending in person or are you zooming in?
It's only Zoom, Ellen. This is a.
Oh,
Actually,
right.
No, it's in
No.
I
person.
thought it's in
Oh, it's
person.
in person?
In person.
Wants it in person.
Yeah, this
Oh.
meeting's in person. The chair has asked for the meeting to be in person. So they usually meet through Zoom, but this one
Yeah.
will be an in-person in room 206,
206.
CMB.
And,
All right.
and, Jeff, for that, and Rich, for that meeting, is it kind of some of the slides that we've used previously when talking about why we picked AR4A?
I'll let Mike Kaczynski answer that, but what's been told to me so far is they just want, yeah, the conclusion, not the whole backdrop, but your conclusion as to why AR4A is the optimal solution.
I
for
think
this.
they're looking for the executive summary of, hey, we're gonna
Oh,
do a
yeah.
project.
So the capital planning committee's mission is not to determine which plan is the best. So they just want to see what the final plan is and understand
Agreed.
what the benefits are of moving forward versus not moving forward. That's really, and the cost. That's really all they're looking at. They're not looking at the whole developed process of all the different options. They just want to see what the
Yeah.
final option is.
I think it's fair to say that
Thank
the
you.
committee will want to put a number into its report
Yes.
for the May town meeting, and we didn't want to. We wanted to make sure that we were reflecting what this committee and the town has already agreed upon in terms of the submission. So
And I
that's
just
what,
pulled up our last report. We were carrying 90 million for this as the town portion.
right.
So we weren't conservative. Yeah, we were.
No, it's
Yeah.
probably going to be,
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit less. I don't know, but at least we've got the real information. It's. I agree with Mike. We're not looking to go through all these things over again because we now know what we're proposing.
Right.
All right, good. So we never answered the question in a meeting. So should we should just set a meeting date, and if we don't
Yeah,
need
so
it, we cancel?
Chris, you're obviously going to be doing the lion's share of the grinding of the next, for the content for the next meeting, right? Because it'll be whatever design decisions you guys want to tee up for that. So are you thinking, 3 weeks from now, meaning like around the 19th, or 4 weeks from now, around the 26th?
I would probably get through the FAS.
So
At least.
the FAS is either the 12th or the 26th, so. if
Yeah,
it's
I
the
would wait
12th,
till after
then-
the 26th then.
So do you want to do it the
Just
night of
because
the
there's no
26th?
use.
Or do you
What's
want to, do it the same night? We'll do it the night of the 26th because you would report out and that's a month from now for you guys to pull content together, or you want to wait and then have some time to pull together a presentation after that?
I think we're gonna probably need some time, but I can't, I just kind of want to see how things unfold in the next week.
All right, why don't we
to be able
circle
to
back?
answer that question
Yeah.
directly.
Why don't we
we'll set
circle
some
back
dates. I
on,
mean, we need at
on
least
the-
a meeting for invoice approval and updates, right? We can kind of, it could be a quick
Yeah.
Zoom meeting at some point in March, but yeah, we'll shoot you guys a
Yeah.
couple of dates and Kim can survey the group.
Okay,
It might be a little easier to select once we have an FAS date
Right.
selected,
Yeah,
signed.
right.
Whatever, though, because it's the 12th comes up quick, so either we're go right out of the chute, or we have a little bit of breathing room when we're going to the 26th.
Yeah.
And just a heads up, Bob, there'll be a dry run for that meeting too. We kind of talked to the MSBA before the FAS.
Great, great.
I'll
Yeah.
get you those dates once we have them.
And the 12th and the 26th look good for my end. We don't have any other meetings scheduled.
all right, well, that's great. Well, thanks again, guys. Appreciate it. All right, that would be Jeff, Chris, and Mike.
Thank you.
Thank
Unless you
you.
want to watch us approve minutes.
I'm not gonna watch that. I'll see you later.
Exciting stuff.
All right.
Don't go away mad.
I'm going away. I'm not mad. I'm thrilled. I'm going away
Hungry.
thrilled.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right,
Good night, all.
and so I make a motion that we approve an invoice, and actually, Kim, I don't have the meeting minute date, but right now I make a motion that we approve the invoice from Vertex for the month of
January.
Yep, and for the amount of $11,054.25.
Second,
All right, motion's been made and seconded. All in favor?
I
Aye.
All right, it passed unanimously. And the next item would be the meeting notes, and the date on that was
122.
okay,
25.
25.
Rich, can I ask you a quick question? Do you have a permanent building committee meeting after this?
We're probably not,
Okay.
but because we could, I really hadn't planned on doing that, but,
No, I'm just curious because I'm the liaison. If we're not, I'm gonna go get something to eat.
oh, then go get something to eat, my friend.
All right, good night.
Good night, Ellen. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. So let me go back. So I make a motion that we approve the meeting notes of January 22nd as written.
Second.
All right, motion's been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, I think, and that was it, Kim?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Yeah, I didn't print that. So so with that being said, I think unless there's anything else, I think we're all set. Thanks for everybody for
I
making
move
time.
we adjourn.
I'm gonna do that
Second.
next. I was gonna
Good,
thank
okay.
everybody first
Oh,
for making an effort to attend on an off night and at the last minute, and I make a motion to adjourn.
second.
Motion's made and seconded. All in favor?
Yeah.
Aye.
Aye.
All right, great. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
All right, good night.
Good night.
Right.